What is up, everyone? Welcome back. We are at the Cash Show, Week 6, talking NFL cash games for you guys. We just got off the college football show, so we decided to start a little bit early. We know a lot of you guys watch on rerun, so we're breaking it down. We're talking about it as the news comes in for this NFL weekend. It's definitely a pretty interesting week when it comes to cash games. Bryce, what's your thoughts here? We got 10 games, so give a quick overview before we dive into the game-by-game stuff.
Well, it's kind of tough to do the show today just because we have so many running back injuries that we're looking out for. You just kind of don't really know like who's playing or whatnot. Even like Rachaad White's a game time decision now. So if he sits, like Bucky Irving becomes a good play. Like if Bijan Robinson would happen to sit, like Algier becomes like a great play. So, this is obviously like all subject to change here, but we'll do our best with the information we have. I think it's a pretty interesting slate here as I think there's spend ups at pretty much every position. So it creates a lot of decisions to be made on where you want to save.
Yeah, some of the news that we got so far. So Anthony Richardson tracking the play. Stevenson ruled out. That obviously open up a value like Gibson, who we'll talk about. I don't know. Maybe we won't like him as much, right? Because there could be other values that pop up that are a little bit better. Let's see. Myers and White, I know they practiced today. Mixon, he is expected back. Dobbs, he'll be expected back. White, game time decision, which you talked about. I know A.J. Brown, he's ready to go. Singletary, he doesn't matter. He's on that night slate. So I think that's most the news there for the most part. Taylor's ruled out. So tons of stuff, obviously, to discuss and tons of more news to come. You talked about it, Bryce. We have plays in all different ranges, it feels like, at most positions. And quarterback I think it's similar to that, too. I think you talk about plays in a lot of different ranges. Like, for instance, Lamar Jackson, 7.8K. We saw him break the slate last week, and I had him, I know, on FanDuel, and that was awesome to have him. It felt good to kind of help him kind of carry a little bit for me. And, hey, that's what he has the ability to do. So you can make the case for him on FanDuel or DraftKings. Problem is, do you want to spend up? That's the big debate you're going to have, Bryce. Do you want to spend for Lamar or go to Jaden Daniels for only $500 more? And then as we keep going, there's Dak Prescott, 6.7K. I think you can make a pretty good case for him against Detroit. I think you could also make Detroit for Jared Goff at 6.4K. He's someone else that's going to be in a good game environment that could be an interesting play. And as we keep going down, if Russell Wilson's not starting, it's Justin Fields. Well, he's a value play that's going against the Raiders that could easily pop off. There's just plays left and right, I think, at each position. And there's guys that I missed that I haven't mentioned. But, Bryce, talk about the quarterback position.
Yeah, I think it's kind of Lamar is like the clear number one option. It's just kind of if you can get him this week. On FanDuel, I think you're a little priced out of Lamar personally. Like he's all the way up there at 9,500, and we have some other good options. DraftKings, 7,800 doesn't kill the rest of your team. So yeah, I would lean towards playing Lamar as opposed to going all the way down to a Spencer Rattler. I think people might play him, just Stoneman 4K. I just really don't love the matchup here against Tampa Bay. I didn't rate him very highly in college, and I do think he struggles here. He's still a 5th round draft pick, and I don't think he has tons of rushing upside here. So yeah, if Rattler gets you 15, that's fine, but I think you kind of want to take a higher raw projection here than go all the way down there. So I would prefer getting up to Lamar or even playing you mentioned Dak at 6-7. I think that's a great fantasy game, and it's a really solid spot for him. On FanDuel, I think he's playable at 8K as well. Jalen Hurts, I think, deserves to be in the conversation as well, getting all his weapons back. His price has kind of come down with Saquon's big games, and I still think that he's a solid fantasy option here. So yeah, I like Lamar up top. Dak and Jalen in the middle, and then everything else is, just kind of lineup dependent. I do prefer Dak and Hurts to Jaden Daniels here. I think if you're playing Jaden Daniels, you would be better off just getting up to Lamar. But Daniels has been an absolute stud. I get it, but yeah. I think if I was going cheap, I wouldn't play Rattler. I would rather get to like, I would rather find the extra 2K and get like a Kirk Cousins or someone like that, or even like, on FanDuel, I think Daniel Jones is in play here at 6,800. It's just FanDuel and like kind of easy to spend on quarterback.
Yeah, the issue with Rattler is Rattler could be a good value, but like he gets there if he gets you like 16 or 17. Like, sure, I would like that, and I'd probably want to play it, but it depends on the other values that we get on the board. We just might have so much value at running back or receiver that it's just not necessary. And honestly, are we dying to spend at tight end these days? No, not really, because you spend it for tight end and you still get 3 fantasy points. So it just doesn't, I don't know. It just doesn't totally matter. So I'm not excited to play Rattler. I think he could do perfectly fine. I think he could do better than you do, just because I think the matchup is like, it's just a pass funnel. There's just enough opportunity there. My problem is I just don't think it's going to make sense when the construction comes down to it. So that's probably why I forgot to even mention it, to be honest. But I know I was arguing a little bit with Snyder on Twitter about him today. So,
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I just like this was my point, Bryce. I was like, Snyder saying he's going to get 7 DK points. Like, all right, like then I'll just take the over. And the whole point was, what's the number that you're scared of Spencer Rattler getting to, right? And like, honestly, for
like
me,
20 if you fade him. Like, even if he gets 15, you're not dead. I'd probably set his over under at what, like 12.5, 13. Seems about right.
Yeah,
like 200 yards, touchdown. Probably turnovers that offset his rushing upside.
That's exactly how I felt. Like that number you said, 12 or 13, and then. And honestly, that could be solid, right? I mean, we had weeks where, you and I not to rub salt in our wounds, but we had Kyler Murray and we were begging for 12 DK points. Like, You know what I mean? So like, sure, like you could make a case it could work on some weeks, but it's 20. You're like, oh shit, I wish I had him. Like, this is frustrating. 12 or 13, like, sure, that's kind of the projection. I noticed on our RPS projection was 13 when I saw, and that could obviously change as things go on. So should be interesting to see how that all shakes out and how people decide to play him. Let's go over to the running back position, and definitely going to be some plays to discuss here. Obviously, with Stevenson being out, Gibson has to be in the conversation and be an intriguing play. But let's talk about the guys up top. So, yes, there's no Rattler, so Kamara could obviously there's no Carr. So with Rattler, you could see more volume to someone like Kamara, but matchup's not great. Barkley at 8-2, if you are spending up, you could make a strong case for. I think the spot to really start talking is Bijan. Bijan at 6'6", it just feels too cheap against the Panthers. Then you got Chuba Hubbard at 6'3". He makes a lot of sense. If the Steelers don't have any running backs like they haven't, Najee Harris is going to project well. I'm not saying I want to play him, but he is going to project well, and he's going to be a decision point in cash games. Tony Pollard at 6K. I know Tajay Spears is lurking there, but in the matchup against the Colts, he's definitely something you'll have to talk about. You got to discuss the Gibbs and Montgomery going against Dallas. They've got to be at least, someone to mention here. So there's tons of different plays to get to. I'm sure you'll mention guys that I didn't even mention, Bryce, but what's your overall thoughts here on this running back position?
Overall thought this week is that like the mid tier and like lower middle tier is super strong. I'm likely not going to be spending up tons at running back. I don't think you need Barkley this week. Henry is never a cash play to me. Kamara gets bogged down by Rattler playing quarterback, so that just kind of takes them off my radar. Gibbs, to me, is too expensive in a split backfield with Montgomery. I do like that game overall. Mixon coming off injury, I'm not really exactly sure what to expect out of him. Connor seems too cheap or too expensive to me. Sorry. Same with Josh Jacobs. Kind of leads you to Bijan, but the issue I have with Bijan here is his health. We're not even 100% sure that he's going to play. Kind of need to look into that situation a little more when we get some more news, because this always comes out. But Bijan's snaps really haven't been there for me, and I think that he's been playing a little hurt. He has run bad having some touchdowns called back these last couple of weeks, but yeah, 6'6" is so cheap, but there is some risk there. I do think that if we knew he was healthy, I would have Bijan as like a stone lock at 6'6", but I am a little worried about his health. Montgomery, I'm fine passing on. Brian Robinson, banged up against Baltimore. That's a huge pass funnel there. I'm gonna pass there. I don't mind Chuba Hubbard. I've been talking up Chuba for weeks now. With Andy Dalton at quarterback, he gets a huge boost just in terms of overall offensive productivity and his role in the passing game. So I really don't mind that play. Tony Pollard against Indy. I mean, Indy's run defense is just absolutely awful. I think he's a pretty solid play. Then we get into like some of the injury dependent guys. Kind of think my favorites here. I think you have to like Antonio Gibson at 5'3". I think he's a really solid play. Najee Harris at 5'8". I think he's in the conversation. I'm pretty tired of this guy at this point. I didn't play him last week on FanDuel, thankfully. I know that he was somewhat popular there because they included the night game. Just really hate his upside in this spot. So yeah, it's likely kind of a mid-tier week for me. Some guys that I might not have mentioned that stand out a little more on FanDuel, like J.K. Dobbins, where the receptions aren't quite as important. He's pretty cheap there at only 6,700, so I think he's a solid play on FanDuel. Granted, this is all subject to change. Like, say we get Bucky Irving majority of the touches here. If White's out or going to be severely limited, I think he would be a solid play. Obviously if Bijan is out, you can go to Algier. So it's just something to keep an eye on heading into Sunday.
Yeah, that's a big one, right? 5.4K, all the work. Saints matchup not ideal, but just too much work for the price that you'd have to at least think on it and
he's
decide,
just a good football player.
Yeah,
which helps. He's had some fumbling issues. Would be the only risk there. I think. I know you and I have been on Bucky since college. The guy was an absolute beast at Oregon for us.
No, he did have that one fumble late in the game, and obviously that's something as you get down the line, hopefully he doesn't do it too much more. But I think it's Tucker, right? Tucker from Syracuse. He's the only other guy that would then challenge him, but he's not going to steal. It'll be his backfield for sure. So you're not gonna not play someone because you're like, oh, maybe he fumbles. You know what I mean? So that's definitely something we'll think about. And you'd play him because, hey, there's some receivers we want to go up and get, I think, this week. And just depends. Do we have the salary to kind of make it happen? So I certainly want to get CeeDee Lamb in there. I think he's a great play at 8.6K against this pass funnel in Detroit. I think he's the best play on the board, no doubt. Amon-Ra St. Brown, the Lions, it's just not the same situation for him. Now the price is 8.1K and it makes sense. I'm happy they priced him up there, where I think in tournaments he's got some reward and will be lower owned. But cash games, I struggle a little bit with getting to St. Brown. Drake London, 6.7K. He's definitely a mid-tier guy that I think I could like. Obviously, we have this Texans team too with Stephon Diggs with no Nico Collins. And you'll have, of course, Tank Dell at that 6.2K price tag. A lot of guys that we can get to and talk about. Olave is an interesting one because I don't know if you saw, I'm not saying I'm going to play him in cash games, but Spencer Rattler basically said, this guy's awesome and I want to get him the ball. We're not going to play him in cash games, I don't think, but I thought that was a funny one and a guy that's going to be in a trailing script. Terry McLaurin and Zay Flowers, two mid-tier options that are in 53 totals. So how could you ignore it? I think we have to talk about that. Jameson Williams at 5.8K. He kind of looks like a interesting value. And then we got some questionable tags on some plays like Shaheed, for instance. If Shaheed missed, of course, Olave, I think, could pop a little bit more, and then some other values could open up. So a lot of places to discuss here, Bryce. Let's start at the top, though. CeeDee Lamb, is he just an absolute slam in there? And then how do you handle these top-end guys?
I wouldn't consider CeeDee an absolute stone lock. I would consider him my favorite skill position play on the board. I know we had talked a decent amount about opportunity cost here, and I tried to highlight some cheaper running backs. It's because I think I would much rather spend on a CeeDee Lamb than a Saquon Barkley this week personally, just in terms of roster construction and how everything works out. So yeah, I mean I like CeeDee. I don't really think it's possible to do CeeDee and Amon-Ra, and I prefer CeeDee to Amon-Ra. So it's just kind of one of those guys you're going to have to fade a bit. You mentioned the newer or kind of the updated offense this year with an increased role for Jameson Williams, and you've seen Amon-Ra and Sam Laporta kind of take a back seat to them a bit. I think he's a great tournament play, but I'm likely not going to get there in cash. And then after them, it kind of comes down to this mid-tier range of receivers. Really like Drake London this week. it seems like Cousins really likes him. He put up an absolute monster game last week. I've always been a believer in Drake London's talent, and it's just kind of if he's going to get the football. And, I do think he gets the football here against a bad defense. I mean, you saw what Caleb Williams in Chicago did to them last week. The Panthers can't stop anyone. So I think it's really solid pairing of matchup talent and opportunity here for London.
Not only that, Bryce, real quick though, the pace they're playing at, they picked up their pace as well, which is definitely strong. And so that's another thing that's super encouraging. And hey, Cousins is just, he's only 5 weeks in with this team. It takes time to gel, right? It's not surprising that we're finally seeing Drake London now kind of get there with Cousins.
Yeah, and Cousins is coming off injury too. I know their coach had talked about that a lot to start the season. So now that he's back to full strength, or certainly looks like he is at least, you see them kind of get into what they actually want to do on offense, which is get the ball out faster than you would kind of expect. So, I mean, I think Ray McLeod is playable as a punt, 4.3K. I don't think he's the worst play, to be honest, if you want to fit in some of these guys. I think Mooney's, playable. He would be more of a tournament play than a cash play for me at 5.3, but if he fills out your roster, I think he's fine. Rest of the mid-tier I'd round out. I think Zay Flowers, I'm just going to rank these plays real quick. Zay Flowers, Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin in order would kind of be my preferred mid-tier. The worry with Zay Flowers is always that if Baltimore can run the ball, they're just going to run the ball the entire time. But, that's why he's not like an AK receiver. Lamar obviously likes Zay Flowers. He's the number one option on this offense. And, we're expecting Baltimore to put up a ton of points here. So I think you have to have some interest in him. On the other side of the ball, you get Terry McLaurin. I definitely want exposure to him. I'm just not sure I'm going to be able to get there in cash with to me, Lamb and London are more priorities than these guys. So, I kind of struggle getting to a third one of them, but if I'm able to, and we get some running back value, I would absolutely love to. So, yeah, that's pretty much it at receiver for me this week. I think that, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, definitely going to be a spot where, hey, we're going to want to get some exposure to some of these mid-tier guys. If you can get up the expensive option, I agree. One thing you said, position player, just who's the guy to go get? I don't want Barkley. I want Lamb, right? That was one definitely point that you brought up that I thought was a good one. That priority-wise, I think Lamb is definitely a priority over Barkley if you can make it happen. But again, there's a lot of really good plays overall. There's also questionable tags that we're waiting on with some players. So that's some stuff that we'll have to sift through. And we'll be in the Discord chat for you guys. We'll be putting up the content for you. So be sure to check all of that out. All right, time to go to the tight end position. Tight end has been brutal this year. I mean, absolutely brutal. It's been so frustrating for sure. Jake Ferguson, he does seem like a really good value this week. That, there are certain guys that every week I'm like, hey, there's a decision point to be made on this guy. This is another one. We got to make a decision on this guy, Jake Ferguson, because he's 5K, really good game environment. This team can't run the ball, so they just pass all the time. I mean, Jake Ferguson has to be a good play. The question is, do you want to go other options? Savion Sanders at 2.6K. As a punt, I don't think he's the worst option on the board. Trey McBride, 5.7 against Green Bay. That game could certainly be a bit of a shootout. Brock Bowers, you could make an argument. I know he's going to be lower owned this week, but you can make the argument that the first week that everyone played him, it was a spot where, hey, he did bust, but he could just absolutely nuke the rest of the year, and we'll feel like idiots that we didn't play him sooner with how bad the tight ends have been. I mean, tight end looks like it's Jake Ferguson and move on for me, or find a punt. That's kind of my overall thought process right now. How about you, Bryce?
100%. Ferguson or punt for me. Issue is I would love to spend down a tight end. I just don't love these punts right now. So, I'm kind of hoping that we get a better one. It's I don't see a lot at 2.5. I mean, who would you play? Jatavion Sanders?
Sanders is the guy, but I don't even want to play him. You know what I mean?
No, I don't either. I mean, I think he'd be better off finding 1,000 to get to K-Dot. And at that point, it's why don't you just find the 1,500 and get to Ferguson? So, it's easier to play Ferguson on FanDuel than DraftKings, but right now, Ferguson would be kind of a priority for me. And, I'd be totally fine playing him and Lamb together. I think there's a lot of points in in this Dallas game. So, yeah, kind of why I was trying to highlight these cheaper running backs for you. Like right now, I'm just kind of going into like cheaper running back builds than I would necessarily like to, but it's more out of necessity this week than anything else.
Yeah, I agree. And that isn't a late game. So if you do want to make pivots, that's something you could do. That a lot of tight ends are in the late window. Also, I don't think this happens, but let's say Jatavion Sanders comes in at like 25%. I don't think that happens, but let's just say there's a punt tight end that comes in like, that just going to be 20% or more, could even get to 40%. You have pivots, right? Like Hayden Hurst is the same price as Jatavion Sanders. Both plays suck. They're both not good plays. So that's something to think about too, pivoting wise. And hey, you could pivot off of Ferguson and then like upgrade another position if you wanted to and go down to another option that's kind of available in that late window. The late window games are Chargers, Broncos, Pittsburgh, and the Raiders, which again, you can get the Brock Bowers, you go to a Pat Freiermuth, you got Lions, you go to Sam Laporta, Ferguson, there's Kyle Pitts, you could play him against Carolina. So tight end, there's tons of pivots if you're playing that late window that you can get to. I'm not saying I love them, but hey, they're there, they're options. But Jake Ferguson looks like he is the best play on the board there. All right, defensive. Well, let's talk about flex. Flex, I assume, will do 3 running backs, but I don't know, Bryce. I think you could make an argument that, hey, 4 receivers could come into the mix, but what's your thoughts?
If we get some of this running back value that we're talking about, I think it's definitely going to be 3 running backs. If you need to save some salary, I'm trying to play 3 running backs, but I could see 4 receivers. I would feel a little more comfortable if I liked the punts more at receiver, but I'm fine playing like a Drake London and Ray McLeod.
Yep. Good points there. Let's go to defense. Not the best thing to talk about. Last week, it felt like the Broncos were one of the stronger defensive plays that we've had so far through the first 6 weeks, and people wanted to play them, and they obviously were good, and a lot of defenses did pretty good in that 4 o'clock window. I think every defense scored a touchdown.
Every defense besides one scored a touchdown. So it was kind of, if you played a 4 p.m. defense, you were good, and if you played a 1 p.m. defense, you were not very happy in the 4 p.m. window. To me, the one that stands out this week is the Bucs. I know we've been talking shit about Spencer Rattler some.
Yeah.
Why not target him with your defense? He's priced like Derek Carr's playing, not like a 5th round rookie making his first NFL start. I do think the Saints will scheme him into some good spots, but I still think he's super mistake prone here. Could take a decent amount of sacks. Doesn't break the bank on either site. I kind of think they're going to be like the uber chalk defense this week too. So yeah, if you need to save some more money, I don't think they're a must play or anything. I would be fine going all the way down to the Pats. I don't think Tampa is a must play, but I do think they profile the best here.
Yeah, by the way, did get news. Trey Sermon not on the injury report. And then this is the big one. Pittman and Downs are both questionable, which if both sit, obviously.
I was not expecting Pittman to even practice today or play this week, but now it looks like he's going to play. Granted, is Richardson's going to play, right? Or he's supposed to? I don't want them with Richardson. So that's kind of not – I'm looking more towards the running back news. If Flacco was in there, I'd be all guns blazing. Oh, go out, play these Colts receivers. But with Richardson there, it's just such a passing downgrade that I want nothing to do with them.
Yeah, if both Pittman and Downs somehow sat, you could make a case for an Adonai Mitchell at 3.9, but
you could play him or Pierce for super cheap for sure.
Pierce is actually 5'4", so you're not going to love that tag, but yeah, I know it's crazy.
He's averaging 21 yards. I saw that stat on Twitter. I would shout whoever put it out, but I kind of forget who did. It was 21 yards per target, not even per catch. It's one of the crazier rates that you'll ever see. That's going to come back down to earth. I'm all for Alec Pierce, but that's just not sustainable. So, I want nothing to do with him. Maybe a punt tight end. They could play a lot of double tight end and give Granson more reps or something, or Mo Alley Cox. But not a situation I'm interested in.
He's a 2.6K Mo Alley Cox, so there you go. It's gross for sure. And
I'd rather do that than play Pierce for 5'4". to be honest.
Oh,
It
yeah.
fills a position that you don't want to play.
Oh, for sure. And then I did want to mention, I do agree with your Bucks take on that. If you are spending, like, I think you could make a case on the Saints for 100 more, but I'd probably rather the Bucks. And then, like, if you spend, like, Eagles defense 3-4 against, like,
It would be
Watson,
the Eagles.
yeah,
100% agree there.
it's them if you spend. Other than that, it's, I guess you feel like you could make.
I personally don't think you should be spending this week because, like, we've talked
Yeah.
about all these one plays like Ferguson, Lamb, etc. I think you should be finding a way to get, like, into the next tier at whatever position you're at. Whether it's, like, I don't know, a Dak Prescott to, like, a Lamar Jackson. Like, I would rather play, like, Lamar in the Bucks D over, like, Dak in the Eagles defense.
Yeah, let's answer this gross question in the chat. This is a tough one. That's why I want to answer it. 14-team PPR league flex. Gibson, Patriots, Mitchell, Colts, and Schultz, Texans.
Gibson.
Actually, I don't even know if he's not mentioning the defense. He's just naming the players. But yeah, so you say Gibson. Yeah, it's probably Gibson. Yeah, I'd agree.
I think Gibson's a good play this week without Stevenson.
Yes, you're 100% right. He's just going to be the bell cow, right? Now, I'm not saying he's going to survive being a bell cow for the next, 10 weeks if that was the case. But
I mean, their offensive line is so bad. I could see May dumping it down to him a bit. He has good hands. We didn't go super in depth there as to why he's a good play, but I expect him to get 20 touches at home. That's pretty much all you need at that price. He should be able to grind his way to 10 points. If he finds his way in the end zone, I think, like, a Tyrone Tracy outcome would be, like, his ceiling. But, like, he would get all of, we were so scared to play the Giants backfield last week. And granted, the Patriots offensive line is way worse. But think if, like, Tracy had gotten all that work last week, like, he split a lot of it with Eric Gray. It's kind of that same type of situation. He's just not as cheap.
Yeah, and, like, I don't know what Tyrone Tracy's going to be, but we do know Gibson, like, has made a role in the NFL. Like, he's a veteran now, technically. So
yeah, he's a solid player. I mean, we were playing him on normal slates in Washington. It's just kind of like the Patriots offense, especially their offensive line, is so bad that it's an ugly play, but it's definitely doable.
For sure. All right, that's going to wrap it up for us. We got everything going. We got the cash game stuff. We'll make sure to have up on the site. We'll be in the Discord chat to answer all of your questions. There'll be tons of other content for you guys, of course. So go sign up at Run Pure. Hit that like too. We would appreciate it on the way out. But for me, man, go and Bryce. We'll see you guys later.